Story 1. Boyfriend is upset that my brother didn't let him spend the night with me when I was very drunk. I've just turned 18 and can now legally drink where I live. So my brother invited me, my boyfriend, and a few friends and cousins over to hang out and maybe get drunk. I drank way more than I should have. People left one by one, and I was only there with my brother and boyfriend. I don't remember much, except I woke up in his spare bedroom in the morning and my boyfriend wasn't there. Apparently, I passed out on the couch. My brother took me to the bedroom to sleep, and my boyfriend wanted to spend the night there, but my brother said no. My brother says he didn't let him stay because he doesn't know him, and he didn't know if we've been intimate, and I was completely incapacitated and couldn't consent to intimacy or anything intimate. So he felt like it's safer to not allow him to spend the night there with me. Boyfriend insisted that he doesn't want to be intimate, just cuddling. He got confrontational with my brother and accused him of being controlling and said he has no right to decide if he can spend the night with me, which my brother told him, I can decide you're not going to spend another minute in my house. Boyfriend said he'll leave, but he'll take me with him. Brother stood in his way and told him to either leave or deal with the police. Boyfriend left. So here we are. My brother thinks I'm dating a complete idiot and jerkwad. My boyfriend thinks I have a jerkwad controlling brother, and I've spent the last 2 days regretting drinking that much. My own feeling is that it would have been okay if my boyfriend spent the night with me in the bed, but absolutely not okay to have spicy time. We haven't been intimate yet, dating less than a month. I understand why my brother acted in a protective way. I was drunk, and letting a guy who's interested in me intimately spend the night with me is just unnecessary risk. I also understand my boyfriend's disappointment, but he should have respected my brother in his own house. So now my boyfriend has demanded an apology from my brother for being distrusting and for interfering in his relationship, and my brother has banned him from future events and parties at his place for being a jerkwad. My boyfriend would also like me to demand an apology on my own behalf from my brother for him acting the way he did, by assuming he can decide who I can or can't spend the night with. I'm in this mess, and I need to make this disappear if I'm to have some peace and make everything normal again with my relationship and my family. What should I say to my boyfriend? I think he needs to drop this and move on, and over time, show to my family that his behavior on that night wasn't who he really is, to earn their trust. I really am leaning towards the brother's decision on this. And the boyfriend's behavior, especially with demanding apologies and then demanding she behave a certain way, demanding she get an apology on her own behalf, kind of leans towards the boyfriend really being controlling. And I really think things would have gotten a bit too far if the boyfriend were allowed to spend the night. I really don't think the brother did anything wrong. The boyfriend could have just crashed there or something. I don't know how drunk the boyfriend was. I mean, if it sounds like the boyfriend had a little more presence of mind than the girl in this position. And it's not blaming the girl here, but it's kind of a way of showing how being drunk is not just your decision. It does affect those people around you. And I'm not saying that the girlfriend should not have gotten drunk if she didn't want to. It just shows how that can affect other people. Story 2. The time Read Your Contract backfired regarding holiday pay. Back in 2015, I worked for a pretty dismal call center. It was an outsourced center that handled customer support for a lot of UK retailers. Staff turnover was really high, with the vast majority being on temporary contracts and the promise of a permanent contract being hung over people's heads to make them suck up being treated like dirt. After working there for about 2 years, in late February of that year, I was offered a permanent contract because they wanted to put me on their team leader program. The pay was slightly better, the job security was better. The only major difference was how holidays were handled. People on temporary contracts were paid for any unused holidays at the end of the working year in April. People on permanent contracts had to use their holidays or they would lose them. I had just over 3 weeks of holidays saved up. So the day I accepted, I booked 3 weeks off in March so as I wouldn't lose them in April. March rolled around and my manager told me that my holidays had been refused. I said, that's fine as long as they pay me for them. And he replied, no, if you don't use your holidays, you lose them. I said that I was trying to use my holidays and they weren't letting me. He shrugged and said it's the employee's duty to manage their holiday time wisely and I should read my contract, despite the fact I had only gotten the contract 3 weeks earlier and the holidays worked differently. Understandably annoyed that evening, I went home and read the contract from beginning to end and discovered my manager had overlooked one crucial part of the paperwork. The contract clearly stated that I had to give a week's notice and that any holidays not used would be paid to any leaving employee in full on their last paycheck. The next day, I came into work and announced I would be quitting unless I was paid my holidays or allowed to take the time off. And if they accepted my notice, then to be sure my holiday days were included in my final paycheck. My boss asked me if I was really going to quit over this, and I replied, was he really going to lose one of his most reliable employees over this? He wouldn't budge. I assume he thought I was bluffing. So I handed in my notice, and on my leaving interview with my manager, I made sure to explain exactly why I was leaving. And yes, my final paycheck did include my unused holiday days. The end. Well, you do have to look for a job, but you're still going to get some extra pay to cushion that while you're doing it. Definitely read your contracts and know what is possible. I say that a lot in these videos, but it's very true. This person definitely read it, and you really need to know your rights, because if they were going to work them over on this, then it's possible that they were going to try and take advantage of anything else that they could. It was just indicative of a pattern. Story 3. You can't name your baby that. So back in the late 90s, when Sears wasn't sad and dying, my mother was an assistant manager. Her boss was also pregnant, and this generally wasn't an issue until it was. Now, my parents spent a long time choosing baby names when I turned out to be a girl. They really wanted my name to be gender neutral to prevent future trouble finding jobs. Yes, this is the actual reason. But my middle name remained the same as when they thought I was a boy, Ryan. When they decided on my full name, my mom told my friends about it, and one of them ended up telling the manager. As my mother was on lunch break, this lady storms in, already red and fuming. I heard you were naming your baby Ryan. My mother is, of course, stunned. She stays silent for a few moments before finally answering, that's her middle name. Yes, your baby is a girl, the woman exclaims, as though this is some sort of great revelation. My mother nods. Getting somehow redder, the woman snaps, Ryan is a boy's name. Actually, it's gender neutral. At this point, my mother's surprise is wearing off into a bit of righteous confusion. Is there a problem with that name? You can't name your baby that. The woman is practically shouting at this point. I'm naming my son that. My mother stares at her, trying to work out what kind of mental gymnastics it takes to decide your choice of baby name should give you the authority to veto someone else's baby name. And she says, so? Change your baby's middle name or I'm going to fire you, the woman says, having drawn a crowd with this whole scene to witness the utter insanity that was her outburst. People who could act as witnesses for my mother if she attempted such a thing. I don't think you can do that, my mother answers flatly. She couldn't even fire my mother on some other infraction because there was no other infraction. The staff was friendly with my mother and she had brought up sales in her area by a lot. The woman stops for a moment, maybe realizing that my mother was right on that point, and once again demands, change your baby's middle name. I choose Ryan first. Ah, yes, calling dibs. Surely my mother would have to respect a grown woman calling dibs on a very common name. Ryan is my maiden name, my mom answers flatly. At this, the woman stops, still furious, sputters for a moment, and finally stomps off. My middle name is Ryan. My mother's boss named her son Dylan instead. All right, very close. Getting fired over a name? Good thing there were witnesses. I'm sure any business would try and trump up some charges. This person did not value this woman's work over having control or something like that. She probably would have tried to fire her, even though she was a very effective worker. Just awful. Know your rights. Get witnesses. Document everything. It's the usual stuff when talking about work stories. Story 4. Today, I fracked up by not telling my wife our son was coming home. This happened Sunday night. My oldest son is in the Marines. Hasn't been home in almost a year. He took 10 days leave so he could come visit. At first, we did not tell his mother in case the leave got denied. When it was approved, he just decided he would fly in and surprise her. I tell the wife I'm going over to a friend's to watch the Packers-Falcons game as a cover to pick him up. I got to the airport and actually watched the second quarter of the game waiting for his plane. He gets off the plane, we talk for a bit waiting for the luggage, and then he goes to change into his dress blues. Now, the whole time I've been texting my wife saying I was bored, the game sucked, I wasn't going to stay much longer. We discuss the plan on how to surprise his mother on the drive back to the house. We go back and forth from having her open the door to see him on the porch to just having him walk into the house. We settled on him waiting a few minutes after I went inside, as I wanted to get the whole thing on video. Free internet points and all that. I walk in and the house is quiet. No one in the living room. A little odd, but it is after 9 p.m. Maybe by some miracle my other kids are actually already in bed. Alarm bells start going off in my head when I open our bedroom door, and the first thing I notice is flickering candlelight. What I did not know was the entire time I was gone, my wife set in motion her own plan for the evening. She got the kids settled by letting them keep their tablets after bedtime, took a nice hot bath, redid her makeup, and when I told her I was on the way home, lit the room with candles and put on her Take Me lingerie. So, no guff. There I was, staring at my wife, giving me her best come hither look with our 21-year-old son outside not 30 feet away, waiting to surprise her. A handful of reactions to this scene are acceptable. Pulling out your cell phone and sending a text message is not. The text told my son to stay outside. I have solved the most immediate problem of our son walking in and seeing his mother like that, but I was drawing a blank on how to fix everything else. So my brain latched on to what has to be the most stupid plan I have ever had in my life. I told my wife to get dressed because she would never believe what the neighbors were doing, and she had to come see. The look of confusion on her face was priceless. It took me 5 minutes to convince her to put on some sweatpants and a sweatshirt to go to the front door. Finally, after dodging all her questions and getting her to open the door, there was our son in his dress uniform, and she was ecstatic. The noise brought all the kids out, and everyone was happy, except me. The wife excused herself after a few minutes and took off the lingerie under her sweats before anyone noticed. It goes without saying, I did not get any action that night. Also, in trying to salvage the whole surprise, I forgot to video it for my free internet points, so I guess the day I fracked up will have to suffice instead. It could have gone a lot worse. I think it's rather adorable that these two were trying to have a pleasant surprise for each other, and it just happened to coincide on that day. No one ended up upset, and I guess the guy could just maybe talk about maybe we could take this up for another day or something like that. He still wanted to hold on to the surprise. He was still caring. He still wanted to bring about a pleasant surprise for the wife. So it all worked out. Just maybe wait a little while before you try and pick things up with a wife again, if that's what you're so stressed about. But it could have gone a lot worse. Story 5. Today I came home to a new fence in my backyard, and nobody knows where it came from. Delaware, USA. No homeowners association. We live in a row home, and the house attached to ours is vacant. It's been on the market since before we moved in, and nobody's lived in it for at least 5 years. There was a small cast iron fence between the 2 yards, on my property line, that went from under the fire escape to the back garage. I removed that fence as it was on my property about a month ago and installed brand new beautiful sod. Well, I came home today and this disgusting mismatched random combination of fences has been erected between the yards. Part of it goes over my property line, crushing the sod at the bottom of the fire escape. The leprechauns, or whoever installed it, stepped over all my grass to do so, and to top it all off, they gave us the ugly side, which is totally against fence etiquette. I don't know who owns it, so I called the real estate agent. He was just as shocked as I was when I told him there had been a fence built at a house he is selling. He had no idea. He'll be in contact with the owner of the property tomorrow, but she's a 70-year-old woman who doesn't live here, and he said he can't imagine why she would have a fence built. I asked my neighbor on the other side if she saw anything, and she didn't. What do I do about this fence? I would say make sure it's okay for you to remove it as it's on your property. Before you do anything, make sure it's legal for you to do so. If it's legal for you to do so, and you remove it, I'm pretty sure whoever put up the fence will probably come around. Maybe that might not be a good idea depending on how angry and fight happy they might want to get. But if you start messing with it again, I'm pretty sure they'd show up. It's the opposite of Field of Dreams. If you tear it down, they will come. Story 6. Need me to send in proof of my name change? Fine. Enjoy your jammed fax machine. I called again. Same spiel on the other end of the phone. Please mail or fax. You get the deal. I once more did what they asked. Yet another week passes. I call again. Told the same damn script. I'm starting to get annoyed by this point. I have an upcoming trip planned and need the card to match my ID, so I asked to speak to a manager. They give me some hogwash of a manager not being currently available. Anyways, I fax in the document and court order once again. However, this time I decided I was just going to keep hitting send after the previous one had shown as delivered. I thought I'd repeat the process a few times just to make sure they got it. After sending it 25 times the first day, I got no response. Next day, I was sitting on my couch watching football. Thought I'd send the fax a few more times. By the time I realized how many times I'd hit send, I had sent it over 130 times. The very next afternoon, I got a call from a manager at CC Company. She sounded quite angry over the phone. I just played dumb. You guys asked me to fax it in. I got my updated card in the mail 3 days later. Too long didn't read? Spent almost 2 months trying to update my name on my credit card. The credit card company gave me the same runaround every time I called. Just fax us X and Y. Faxed them X and Y about 150 times. They finally sent me a new card with the correct name. Apparently, you just had to get someone's attention. Everyone was giving you the runaround, and you had to try and reach some kind of human. Everyone, it's awful that you had to go through this just to get the name change and just to get things set up. It just speaks on how automation just doesn't always work for some things.
Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.